you have your life together, and it makes sense that women would be interested in you because you have your life together. Because that's what women like. They like guys that have it sorted, right? So of course they're going to be attracted to you. Of course they're going to want to date you. Of course, at some point they're going to start giving you lyrics like, "Where do we stand? Where is this going? What are we? Like to have kids at some point," sort of thing. You got to be very, very discerning as a guy about the women that you deal with. So in the past, yeah, you're right. I was more or less, I was going with the flow. I was doing what culture and society always tells us to do. Because they tell men and women different things. They tell women, do what's right for you, girl. They tell men, just do what's right. So, you go through life, you get your accomplishments, your accolades, you do something with it of some significance. Maybe you become a professional, maybe you become an entrepreneur. And you start to run into women, and women start to express interest in you, and they try to lock you down, sort of thing. And you give away your commitment, most guys anyway, and I did too when I was younger, just because women express an interest in you. But you don't realize the consequences of what can happen when you start living in a way that looks like marriage to the government, right? You don't even have to get married anymore. You just have to live together for 2 years in Ontario, here anyway, in Toronto. And the government basically says that you're married. So if your relationship doesn't work out and you're living together, now you have to divide your assets. If you have kids involved, then there's family law that's involved in that as well. You don't even have to be married, right? So you have to be very, very careful. And it's only chaos that brings guys to the point where they start asking questions, which is what I did, about 10, 15 years ago. Like, why is it everything that I've been told that I should be doing as a guy doesn't benefit me? Right? Why is it that chaos and stress and sleepless nights and the involvement of family law gets involved in my life and governs things like what happens to my wealth or what happens to my access to my kids, right? The whole point of having children, pass on your name, pass on your DNA, leave a genetic legacy. But in the Western countries, the government gets too involved in that. They rattle that cage too much. So you have to be very, very careful. And nobody tells guys this. Nobody told me this. If you took graduating classes from high school, 18-year-olds, and you brought them into family court for an afternoon so they could see what happens to fathers when they go through the family court system, they'd be thinking twice about marriage and inviting women into their life in a way that looks like marriage. So I think that asking these questions is important. I think that men and women, conversely, are better together than they are apart. I think a woman can be a good complement to a man's life. And I think a man can bring a lot of value to a woman's life. So I'm not opposed to the sexes coming together. What I'm opposed to is living in a way that complicates your life unnecessarily. And there's a lot of horrible women out there. There's some pretty terrific ones too, but there's a lot of horrible ones out there that could just be the end of you.
Yeah, I always thought to myself, like, if you're successful, like, and you're a wife, you go through a hardship, and for whatever reason, your wife just wants out.
Mm-hmm.
She's literally financially incentivized to not work it out with you and divorce you.
Absolutely.
Whereas you are almost held like a hostage of like, well, I have to work this out or I'm about to lose half.
Yeah.
I don't see how that helps. I don't think that helps. Now you could make the argument that the woman sacrificed her career.
Mm.
You could make the argument, okay, she didn't go to school, she sacrificed her career. You could also make the argument that, like in India, for example, the marriages are still there because the woman needs the man and she's desperate. And then some of the guys also abuse it. They abuse the fact that the woman needs the guy. They beat her, they rape her, whatever, that's his wife,
Yeah.
But I also think that there can be a better way than what we have without both extremes.
Yeah, it's gone too far. Like,
yeah.
So like the notion of feminism leveling the playing field happened a long time ago. Women can vote, they can drive cars, they go in the workforce, they can pay taxes if they want to get in the workforce and do all that sort of stuff. So that's been around for a long time, but there's been like even recent laws, I think as recently as the 50s or 60s, I think a man in most of the US states could force himself on his wife as part of the covenant of marriage. So if he wanted to grape her, for example, because he wanted his way and she didn't want it, he could get away with that as recently as like the 50s or 60s. But a lot of these laws started coming into place and they're like, we need to fix this, we need to fix that. And then it just kept going. And it's no longer about equality or protecting women. Now it's about supremacy. It's about dominating and having men bend the knee to the whim of just about everything. And most guys don't realize the power that women wield today until they go through something like a divorce, for example, right? Like a woman doesn't have to prove domestic violence. She just has to call the police and say, he scared me and he threatened me. And then you're probably going to be taken away in handcuffs, thrown in a cell overnight. She could probably have the locks changed on the house and then alienate you from the kids as part of the process during the divorce, all without any kind of proof whatsoever, right? So you've got to be very, very careful. You've got to be super careful and really open your eyes to see what sort of consequences exist. Because they always say, like the most important decision you have to make as a man is who you marry. And I would say that's very true. If you're all about marriage and that's what you want to do, you have to be very discerning in who you invite into your life. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no to horrible women. And nobody's telling guys that today, right? They're still saying, you do what's right.
So how would you solve that? Like as a single man right now, 24, what would you do to just basically not get married?
Yeah, you can't solve it. You can't solve it. I don't think you or I or even 1,000 guys watching this, could solve that. They've tried to solve it by saying, oh, just check out, right? Like don't deal with women or just go MGTOW even, right? Which is an acronym for men going the wrong way. And that doesn't work. Right, it's not going to change the course of anything. Women will just choose other guys that are out there, and other guys will just choose them back. I think that you have to educate yourself as far as what the laws look like. I think you have to get good at vetting women, understanding what a good woman looks like versus a bad woman, because that's the whole reason why we're here, to scatter seed, as men. And you're never going to get away from dealing with women. Right? It's just not going to happen.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full-length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here and pin down below in the top comment. You'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.